Yo, it's your boy Dave, and I'm here to learn you some comics so that way the SJW mob doesn't take over the industry. Sorry, that's not me. I'm I'm doing that to make a point. There's a big controversy, as it were, in the world of comics. Mostly comics Twitter, if I'm being honest, but comics Twitter is comics right now, if I'm also being honest. You see, a reviewer has caused massive butthurt in the industry. Butthurt so massive, I can't really describe it in any other way. People call it Comicsgate now. I hate using a term like that because I think that's a stupid name, but I'm going to call it something else here. I'm going to call it, well, I'm just going to call it what it is at this point, stupidity. But how did we get here to this point where a reviewer on YouTube who managed to make 60,000 subs at the time of this recording and an Indiegogo that raised $250,000 to make a comic book caused such butthurt? Well, we're gonna go back and we're gonna take a look at some comics along the way. Let's go back to the main point here. This is understanding comics. See, Scott McCloud. If there was a guide on comic books, I would say this is the one. This is the one you have to read to understand comics if you want to understand the medium at all. It's an entire graphic novel textbook on comics. See that nice black and white indie art that sends shivers down my spine, that lightning bolt on the shirt? Oh boy, the hipster, I can feel it come off the pages. But I'm only insulting because I personally find this to be one of the most important works in the graphic novel medium. Because of it, terms like graphic novel became popularized and everything else in between. It really was the first thing to bring comic book criticism to the mainstream. And it hasn't grown beyond this at all. You see, this book right here is it. This is the best comics criticism. This is the best what is comics out there. This is all you really need at this point. People have tried, but there hasn't been a really good one. Sure, there are plenty of good websites. Comics Alliance, Comic Book Resources, Newsarama. But the biggest comic book website right now is probably Bleeding Cool, which can best be described as the National Enquirer for comics. It's not a good website at all. In fact, I would call it one of the worst websites of all time. But that's what it is. Rich Johnston, who runs it, is considered a scum-mucking rake bag. I don't know anymore. He's considered one of the ultimate scumbags of the comic book industry because of how he handles it. He creates rumors that sometimes are true, sometimes are not. And he gets this through various ways. To give you an idea of how much of a scumbag he is, according to him, at one point, he had enough dirt on Marvel Comics that if he ever revealed anything, he could literally take the entire company down. That's the type of scumbag we're talking about. Like, hey, you don't want to reveal this information that possibly is criminal? Well, that should say everything you want to know about him. But he's not the only one. In general, the reason I bring up Rich Johnston in particular as a guy is that comic books have always been a niche in general. A huge niche, in fact. Let's take a look at this. This is the comic book history of comics, black and white as well. An entire graphic novel about the entire history of comics, as you can see right here. Oh, look at this sarcastic edge, and read all about Jack Kirby and how Stan Lee screwed him over. It's a really good book, actually. But this brings up my point about the culture surrounding comics, you see. We are niche as heck. In fact, everybody kind of knows each other. It is a huge clique of an industry. It's really bad at times. And to tell you the truth, the only way you can get jobs is if you know somebody. Marvel Comics doesn't accept submissions from people. Like, you can't just be an artist, go to an editor and say, hey, can you look at my work? And get a job offer or possibly advice anymore. You don't get that. You don't get that sense of professionalism anymore. Comics, it's often like this. You have a Tumblr? Well, maybe you'll get a book if we like your art well enough. Oh, wait, you're a young adult author? Man, work for us. Gain us that critical respect we so deserve. It's a bit like that. And one of the reasons that this guy, the guy whose style I'm imitating this video, oh God, I'm coughing. Diversity in comics, well, this guy ended up becoming one of the biggest critics on YouTube. Let's go back here. This is Wizards Magazine. This was the face of comic book criticism during the 90s. In fact, I would call it mainstream comic book criticism. This is issue number 29, by the way. You get like, oh, look at this stuff with Pitt and the Max from the 90s. This was what was mainstream back in the day. And you have to understand, this stuff, it was popular. The 90s were one of the most popular things in comics. And that was huge. And we haven't been in a good shape since then. For a lot of reasons. Diversity in comics, his point, why aren't comics selling? And he really brings it down to a simple solution. You have a bunch of people writing it who aren't good people. And that's really what it boils down to. Now, you can argue whether they're good people or not. Some are. Some are good writers, but they haven't exactly been the nicest about it. Heck, if you actually look into it all, you got guys like B. Claymore threatening him on his Facebook to goad him into killing someone at a con. Like, that's the stuff we're talking about, creators responding to him. And is that right? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. Personally, he antagonizes them as much as they antagonize him sometimes. He is no angel himself, but he'll readily admit that. There's a lot of times where he'll actually go and apologize in his videos for something he said, or try to make amends if he feels the need. But he caused a lot of butthurt in general because, well, he would like comics to be kind of like this again. He wants comics to be popular. He wants them to start selling millions again, to start shops being places you could go to get all the comics you want. You know, he wants them to be their best. And he's not seeing that change at all. And that kind of sucks. And that is an agreement I have, if I'm being honest. I want comics to be popular, to be the biggest thing. And, well, he decided to put his money where his mouth is. Let's get to our other player in this story, Mark Waid. This is one of my favorite Mark Waid books of all time. And before we get to that, let me give you a little thing about current comics. I'm going to read you an excerpt. I'm literally intrigued and in awe of both of them. Is this what it's like to date other women? Then I applaud all the women dating women. Right now, because this is incredible. Motorcycle courtship, chase, check. Missiles and explosions, yup. And now, we're just flying together in the sky, heading to the giant heart. I swear, if they come back married, I'm gonna be so jealous. Sigh. And the bride's best archer, never the archer's bride. That was actual dialogue from America. This was considered good writing? He may have a point about some of the creators not being that good. Anyway, back to the actual review. Alright, let's talk about Mark Waid. This is a copy of Fantastic Four Volume 1 of his. It concerns his Fantastic Four comic. It's one of my favorite comics of all time. Look at this art by Mike Wieringo. Cartoony, lively, so much energy in these pages. Really good stuff. And Mark Waid is no slouch with the writing either. In fact, here's a little bit at the end of it. Sorry, coughing. Without proper preparation, and I can't read at this angle. And how does he do it? Oh yeah, I actually am using a camera for a tripod. Anyway, these last 2 pages are about Reed Richards telling his daughter why they became the Fantastic Four, and how the way he handled their transformation into superheroes is, well, make them celebrities, to give them something of their life. Because Reed feels guilty for changing them. So the best way to give them something, make them loved. It might not fix everything, but what can you do at this point? It's a really good run of books. I even like his Doctor Doom issue. Now, some people really don't like his Doctor Doom because Doctor Doom is, oh, look at how evil he is. Rah, rah. But I enjoy it. Like I said, it's a really good run. Now, like I said, I used to really like Mark Waid. I can't really say that anymore. The thing with Mark Waid is that his writing has really gone downhill. Maybe it's because he's older. That happens. Alan Moore has not been a spring chicken in years. Neil Gaiman, some of his recent work hasn't been that great either. Still good, but not love sometimes. But Mark Waid has done some kind of awful things. So let me explain Antarctic Press. Antarctic Press was a comic book company made by weebs sometime around the late 80s to sell comics that appeal to an anime crowd. I'm not joking. They sell a bunch of different comics, but their biggest hit was Steam Wars. Now, you might be asking yourself, why should I talk about them here? Well, this is where it gets interesting with Comicsgate, and ultimately, the question we have to ask ourselves now: should it be right for a comic book writer to call down a publisher and tell them not to publish a comic? That's what Mark Waid did. You see, people have been saying online that Mark Waid doesn't have enough power to do that. I think they're crazy. Mark Waid wrote Kingdom Come, one of the best-selling graphic novels of its era. He wrote Fantastic Four. He wrote Spider-Man. Mark Waid is a big name in comics. He was an editor, a writer. He owned several comic shops. To say the guy doesn't have power is ridiculous. Insane. But he told Antarctic Press that they shouldn't publish. Well, we're not sure what exactly he said to them. But after he called them, and after he dropped every form of social media, they dropped the book. Is that the right thing to do? I don't know what to tell you. Ultimately, whatever Antarctic Press is going to do is going to do. For all it's worth, the Diversity comic book guy, he goes by the name Zach Online, said that we should not hurt Antarctic Press. We should not send threats to them. We should not do anything to them. He said that himself. You can look it up. And at the end of the day, what did we learn from this whole event? A couple things. This is one of my favorite Captain America stories. It's called The Captain. It's about a conservative character taking over the mantle of Captain America and the problems that cause. And questioning your government, questioning the people around you. Really, it's a good work. It's long, though. This thing is like 300 pages. Oh, 400. 500 pages. This is long. Oh, man. But it's one of my favorite works of Captain America's run. Captain America is one of my favorite characters out there, actually. Really good stuff there. I could probably do an entire episode about him later, but we'll save that later. But, again, this is really what it represents. Left, right. And that's what it's coming down to in the comic book industry, whether we like it or not. But what should you learn from this if you want to go forward? Well, if you have the right platform, you can make it in comics. Zach managed to raise enough money to get his graphic novel published and start his own publishing company at this point. In fact, it's new. He's going to be a new comic book creator. We can work outside the big two. That's kind of amazing for creators, actually. And that's actually very important. Heck, the biggest selling creator in comics right now, Regina Telgemeier, or Telemiter, I can't pronounce her name very well. She gets published by Scholastic. And to tell you the truth, Scholastic is kind of scummy sometimes. They're a classic book publisher, and they sell to schools. A lot of her sales are based on stuff you can buy in school libraries. And, well, that's very important right now. Oh, my God. A convenient door opening. What is this? Oh my God, how could I handle this? It feels like this is low budget quality or something. Just kidding. I feel bad. Okay, but in all seriousness, this is kind of the thing for comics right now. It's going to be a lot of controversy, but if you're going to take anything from this whole thing, this whole stupid war, if you have enough followers, if you have the right platform, you can make a comic, you can do anything in this industry. You might not be liked, though. You might be hated, you might be disgraced, you might be any number of things. So, guess what? Adapt. If you want to be the best comic book creator right now, you probably can. Get a good platform, get an audience, make something. Because guess what? If a guy who does videos like this can raise $250,000, well, what excuse does the comic industry have for being like it is? I'm done.
You broke the rules, now I pull out all your pubic hair. You motherfucker.